Ladies and gentlemen, the Season 2 trailer for House of the Dragon, the last one, has just dropped, and this video isn't about that. However, I did feel that it's important to mention it, because I actually enjoyed the trailer. And it's not like I wasn't expecting to enjoy it. I liked the first season, and I feel like I'm going to enjoy the second season because we finally get to see the hoedown throwdown of all the dragons and all the dudes and all the women and all the king's horses and all that other good stuff, right? Finally, we get to see some actual action from a Game of Thrones TV show, right? The reason why I say that, but that's not the point. The point is that I've tried to make this video 4 times, but I can't seem to make sense of how the hell I want to talk about Damon, and even though I may be autistic, I am still willing to wing it. So, Damon is one of the most interesting, if not the most interesting character in the show. His take no prisoners, rock and roll lifestyle is exactly the kind of thing that makes him so magnetic. Alright? From a show only standpoint, I get what the audience likes about this dude. Alright? I am the audience, and I like Damon because Damon is fun. I would say he's the funnest character on the show because he doesn't care, right? However, when that comes to bite him in the ass, it does show a lot about what kind of a person he is. That's not the point. The point is this. A thing that I want to clarify is that I don't think the audience likes Damon morally or ethically, but I think we like him like we might enjoy a pirate. Blackbeard may have done some really bad shit in his life, but he's the dude with fireworks in his hair, and that's cool. That whole anti-establishment nonsense is cool, right? Even though Damon is very pro-establishment. That's not why I like him, though. I like him because he's cool, alright? I'd say he's the most fun and coolest character on the entire show. That being said, let's go into the dichotomy of Daemon Targaryen, alright? And let's start with the goods. Alright, Daemon lives a rogue lifestyle. One might even call him the Rogue Prince. But really, I think Matt Smith's acting exemplifies Daemon far beyond than Daemon's character can be given credit for. Alright? He is a ruthless warrior, a psychic dragon rider. Yes, he doesn't ever give Caraxes a command ever in his life. Alright? Unlike Vhagar and Arax and, all the other ones, Caraxes has never actually ever been given a single, what's the word? Command. That's the one. Alright? A brutal man with no care for consequences and a deep-rooted sense of self-importance. Alright? When he says shit like he can keep his tongue, alright? Or goes through an absolute suicidal charge against the enemy lines, he's seen as a hero. And to some extent he is, alright? Now, I appreciate the show's effort for trying to create drama in the Stepstones, but it was pretty badly executed. Alright, for one, Daemon and the King's army, or the whatever army you want to call it, they have 2 dragons, alright? And one of the largest fleets in Westeros, and an army that occupies said fleet. The idea that Caraxes and Seasmoke have been burning things day and night, and still the Triarchy is managing to beat them, is stupid, alright? First of all, the guerrilla tactics wouldn't work in the long run, which is why in the books he just wins battle after battle alone, alright? No one is with him. He just goes around flying and burning shit. Cool. Secondly, considering there are separate islands in the Stepstones and the entirety of the archipelago, the idea that they can never find Crabfeeder and his main host is a bit stupid. Because even if you start off at one island and make your way across all of them, if you have managed to kill every single person on every single one of those islands, one day you will eventually find Crabfeeder. Alright? That's just my opinion, though. Alright? Now, I won't shit on the show for trying to make his last charge a heroic one, but to me it makes no sense, right? He's losing for 3 years, but then magically wins when his entire army spawns behind him. Where were the lookouts when Corlys and his army walked up to the beach? Because Daemon used a boat, and he rode there. You mean to tell me that Corlys Velaryon has the capacity to move entire armies to just random places on the map? That's what Dany did. Get your own shtick, Corlys, alright? Despite the fact that his army just magically spawns behind him, he fights in the classical Hollywood smash and doom nonsense. That's lame. There's a reason why people form lines in battles, alright? It's because not everybody wants to die. And when you just throw things together, the only thing that's assured is that everybody will die as a consequence of your dumbness. Stupid. Now, despite how irritating it is to say this, Damon to some extent cares about his family. I say it's irritating to say that because he goes and proves it again and again that he only cares about himself. All right, he has like episodes where he becomes emotional. All right, it's not a thing that Damon does well. All right, now to some extent, when the power plays were not being done, he cared very much about Lena. He ignored the non-dragon riding daughter, but that's fair enough to him because I don't know what her name is either. And there was a scene that was cut where he consoles his daughters after Lena dies, which, was cut out because, of course, it was because the writers needed to make room for this goddamn dumbass scene in the 9th episode. Whatever, right? Now, whilst he constantly sabotages his relationship with Vizzy, he does somewhat love him, or at least Damon's version of love is present to him. He was going to fight for Big Bro when Corlys allegedly raised an army to fight for Laenor's right to the throne. Alright? It just goes to show that this man is not very diplomatic. And also, I'd like to point out the fact that in the books, Rhaenys was never considered a real option in the Great Council. It was between Vizzy and Laenor. Alright? Then, secondly, he keeps the city safe as Lord Commander of the Gold Cloaks, but man, that police brutality was somewhat hard to watch. Not really. The Emma scene was hard to watch. Goes to show that even such things in the Game of Thrones verse are hard to watch, doesn't it? Alright? He brings his crown to him from the Stepstones, and he genuinely feels bad for Vizzy when he sees him in the decrepit half-corpse-like state. Despite all that, however, he keeps sabotaging it now, doesn't he? Alright? He makes the air for a day joke, and even though it's ambiguous, I'd still say he said it. Alright? And that's how ambiguity is done, people. Alright? When Damon, I don't think Damon actually says it on screen. The build-up to it exists, but we never hear him say it, alright? That's the kind of ambiguity you use to make a character more interesting. Now, granted, Damon is decently interesting. A lot of the shit he does isn't directly in your face, unlike Aegon and Diana and his bastard sons and the fighting pits, alright? All of Damon's deed, at least some of them, aren't really shown on screen. The air for a day joke isn't shown. Rhea Royce's killing isn't shown, even though he absolutely 100,000% did it. Alright? His war crimes in the Stepstones aren't shown. And for the most part, not a lot of other bad shit that he does is shown. The police brutality is, but I feel like they had to do something, because they can't keep him unsullied for the longest time. Alright? Where was I? Ah, yes. He comes back from the Stepstones and is declared a hero, but then he proceeds to groom his niece. Say what now? Why would you do that? Alright? It's obvious that he has some sort of infatuation with Rhaenyra. Alright? He then bangs his niece on the day of his wife's funeral. Have some bloody decorum. Your wife is dead. Then he coordinates the killing of an innocent man because his victim has Stockholm Syndrome and wants to marry Big Daddy Daemon. Fair enough. He is very handsome. Alright? Those aren't all in order, but you get the drift. Alright? Despite having much more goodness in him in the show, his evil actions are still very prevalent. Now, because I am a natural-born hater and a petty bastard at that, in the tourney scene when Damon jousts Otto's son, who I think is Gawain, he realizes after the first round that he may lose. Alright? And then, when he goes in for the second one, he trips Gawain's horse, so that Gawain falls flat on his face. Now, Otto gets really angry about this, but Vizzy doesn't do anything about it, because of course he doesn't. Viserys has no nutsack. Alright? Then, he defeats Criston Cole in a duel, which I felt was disrespectful to Christy. Alright? He's got one thing going for him, and the audience and the writers won't even give him that. Alright? But that's exactly one of the reasons why he is so fun, because he doesn't give a toss about the damn rules and the consequences. Alright? That being said, I am a petty bastard, and I will hate him every single day for doing something like that. That's not very chivalrous of you now, is it, dude? Alright. Then, by using absolute iron fist methods, he quells the peasants of King's Landing. No trial, no law, just executions. Effective? Sure. But if I went door to door and randomly broke people's legs, chances are that I will at least break one prick's legs. Alright? It's just a matter of numbers. It's like door-to-door sales. Whatever. Where was I? Ah, yes, the infamous air for a day joke. Now, as I've said, he 100% made that joke, but it's ambiguous, and that is exactly how ambiguity is done, people. Alright? Then, after he runs away with Missaria, he has a not so useful interaction with Rhaenyra, where he begins his plot to groom her. You see, in that scene, I felt like Damon saw himself in Rhaenyra. She acted out of accordance, without care for consequences, just like a rogue princess. This is when Damon decided that he has to have her. Grooming started. Alright? It's like a scheme in CK3. Alright? Where was I? Ah, yes. After he gets the dragon egg taken, he does the war in the Stepstones. His brutal methods of crucifying his enemies and all that shit, it works in the short term. But in the long run, the Stepstones go back to shit, don't they? Because he doesn't fortify the damn place. Alright? Short term king. Where was I? Ah, yes. He comes back to King's Landing, gives up his crown, and then proceeds the grooming of it all. But as soon as Rhaenyra is into it, he leaves like a dad going to get milk. Alright? He then kills his wife. Alright? He then comes back to King's Landing after killing said wife, which he definitely did, and then sits down like a debt collector. Alright? And Vizzy has such small nuts that he can't even yell at his brother in a hall. Alright? After Laena's funeral, he does the thing to Rhaenyra, and then he says, I spared you. Excuse me? Didn't spare her that night, now did you, Damon? Alright? Then he orchestrates the killing of the innocent man to marry said niece. Bit gross now, isn't it, man? Alright? Then, boy oh boy, he spends 6 years of his life collecting dragon eggs like a Pokemon player, and never cared to check up on Big Bro. You remember that dude that everyone thinks Damon loves? Yeah, turns out he's been half a ghost these past few years, but Damon didn't check up on him. So much for loving your family. So much for keeping it in the family. Whatever, alright? Then, after Aegon becomes king, he begins plotting on Rhaenyra's behalf. This decision, in my opinion, is what will create the downfall of Daemira, which is a disgusting ship. It's worse than Halagon, or Aegalena, whatever you people... It's worse than Halamond. Whatever, dude. Alright? Now, those are all the things that he's done in the show. I'd argue because we don't see a lot of it happen, fans can ignore it, Unlike Aegon's things with Diana, none of Daemon's victims cry in our faces, which is why we don't feel like he's done a lot of awful shit, alright? We don't see him kill Rhea, we don't see the innocent victims of King's Landing, and we don't see his crimes in the Stepstones. His misdeeds, for the most part, are left off the screen, but even what's present is quite deplorable. You see, when Gurm calls Daemon a grey character, I think he misunderstands himself, because Fire and Blood is a not-so-detailed history book. We don't know what Gurm's fanfics of Daemon look like, alright? But nothing on paper suggests that this man is grey, Prince of Light and Darkness, my toilet roll, right? Where was I? In the books, in the dance at least, Daemon does very few things. One of those things is unnecessarily cruel, sadistic, and it's getting to the point where I'm starting to think if the fandom doesn't hate Daemon after he commits it in the show, we might have a bit of a moral problem in society. In the dance, Daemon does 5 or 6 total things. He takes Harrenhal and some other castles along the way without actually engaging in any dragon fights. Alright? Tactical. That's smart. He sanctions Blood and Cheese. I'll come back to this. He chases Aemond for the most part of Rhaenyra's rule, spares Nettles, kills Aemond. Alright? Those 2 things at the very end are, in my opinion, the best things he ever did in his life. But that's really hard to compare it to. He, of course, kills Aemond, which is the morally better thing to do, and sparing Nettles, obviously, because, she was innocent and all in the books. So I think, for the most part, he's looked at as a heroic figure because he stopped the terror that was Aemond, brainless Targaryen. His depth perception was so messed up from losing an eye that he didn't realize how close to the ground he was flying. Well done. That being said, let's talk about Blood and Cheese. Now, how long is this video? Oh, god damn it. Blood and Cheese is the perfect blend of callous evil and calculated evil. You see, he could have gone after Aegon or Aemond, but he chose Helaena and her children, the most innocent people in the entire conflict. See, he was calculated enough to set up an elaborate plan to get revenge, but his pragmatism stops there, and instead he goes for the option that gives him the least amount of leverage, but instill the most amount of hurt and grief. A smart person might say that if he had taken Jaehaerys and Maelor both hostage, they could have negotiated with Aegon a lot quicker, alright? But instead of using his pragmatism in a useful manner, he stops it exactly where he wants it to ensure that the people who aren't involved are hurt the most. Now, before anyone comes at me and says that Luke wasn't involved either, yeah, I agree with you. However, Luke died in an honorable way. He might not have chosen said death, but he dealt with it like a man would, alright? Or a child. I don't know, he's like 14. Alright, the point is, Luke wasn't actually killed by Aemon. That's what we know as an audience. Luke died because Vagar wanted to kill Arrax, and he just sort of happened to be on top of Arrax at the time. Now, granted the fact that he was in that position because Aemon started it all. So yeah, Aemon is complicit in Luke's death, but he's not exactly responsible for it. Well, actually, no, he's responsible for it, but he didn't do it willingly. It's like manslaughter. If there is one person who I would blame for Rhaenyra's rule not coming a lot quicker and then not being sustainable, it's Damon. Reason being, blood and cheese could have been used a lot more strategically. You see, as I mentioned before, he could have taken the kids hostage. He could have ended up killing all of them, but instead he went for only one of them. The whole son for a son nonsense is just Gurm's way of trying to prolong the war so that he can kill all of the dragons, right? And he does that a lot in the dance, right? A lot of the dragons die in really dumb ways, right? We don't even know how Morning dies. Well, that's neither here nor there, all right? But blood and cheese is unnecessarily cruel. It's a vile thing, and the audience must realize that it is. My biggest problem with the show is that Helena and her kids have not been given all that much time. We haven't really marinated a relationship with Helena, so it might be hard to feel sympathetic for a character we don't even know. But at the same time, I feel like it is going to be easy to sympathize with Helena because the audience found it horrific with what happened to Diana. So, I think what it will boil down to is how the writers choose to progress with it, right? Will it be Damon's own thing? And there is a clip in the second season's trailer where Mysaria suggests something like, those aren't the only options, or something. I don't know what she says, but she says something that's hinting blood and cheese, right? Sorry, my nose is a bit stuffy, right? But in the show, at least, it seems that Mysaria is going to have the first domino is going to fall by Mysaria. Damon's not going to be the one who starts it, and I feel like that's going to ruin a lot of things. But whatever. All right. In addition to the existence of blood and cheese, which I want a Daemon deed to be, all right, I am more interested in Rhaenyra's reaction to the event. You see, the entire realm in the book attributes blood and cheese to her because she was the leader, and frankly, the support she receives is still amazing. The Riverlands lords, Cregan for all of his, boner for honor and all that shit, all right? He's willing to support the side of the woman who's been alleged to have killed a child for no other reason than because he could. And also, a bit of a non-related tangent here. You know how everybody says Daemon loves his family? Clearly he doesn't, alright? Daemon just killed Viserys' grandkid. Well done, Daemon. You really love Viserys, don't you? Alright? Where was I? Ah, yes. Rhaenyra is the one who's attributed blood and cheese. Now, if she comes out and says that I didn't know that Daemon did this, alright, then she looks like a weak leader. That if she comes up and admits that she did do this, then she does look like Maegor with the boobies, doesn't she? Alright? This is what will ignite the downfall of their relationship, in my opinion. Daemon forced her hand here, alright? Where was I? Oh, yes. He broke the chain of command once again and forced her to accept it after the fact. Any other king might have dismissed Daemon, but she needs him desperately, and that's even more annoying to her. All right? Perhaps Rhaenyra would have greenlit blood and cheese herself if he had asked her. Who knows? But the fact that Daemon ignored her in the decision has to make her angry. She's got to be angry. All right? He has flipped their dynamic. He's now the one in charge, and Rhaenyra has to struggle with coming to getting control over him. All right? Where was I? They've already foreshadowed it, all right? Because in the last episode, Daemon is holding the War Council before Rhaenyra even gets there, and then chokes her when she tells him about the prophecy. Once again, the prophecy has no place being in the goddamn show. He could have choked her for something a lot more tangible, all right? You could see a lot in his face. Where was I? You could see also his face when she told him to leave Otto alone, because he absolutely hates taking orders. The perfect conflict, all right? The rogue prince trying to be the second in command. Won't happen. All right. And another thing is that in the trailer, I think there's a clip of Rhaenyra going, "Do you accept me as your queen or not?" Now, I feel like this exact point drives into it. You see, if Daemon continues to break the chain of command, then their rift is going to be a lot more interesting to see. Because so far, Daemon is obviously not a family man by any means, right? But he is a person who cares about the Targs in general, right? He cares about the Valyrian blood or whatever the hell it is. But the downfall of their relationship, and the accumulation of it all coming when Rhaenyra orders the killing of Nettles, is what makes Daemon realize the man he has become, or the man he has always been. When Daemon realizes that Rhaenyra has sent him a message to kill a woman he clearly cares for, he realizes that in the eyes of Rhaenyra, he is a person who is willing to do anything at any cost. All right? He realizes now that his care for anyone doesn't really matter because he is Daemon Targaryen, the man who does things in his own way. All right? And that, I feel like, is when Daemon finally breaks. He realizes the person that he is at the end of it all when everybody treats him as a person he clearly is. All right? And that's when he comes to the realization that his life needs to end, but he needs to end it in a cool-ass way. Cue the Battle above the God's Eye. All right? In the end, what do I want from Daemon in the show? Well, you see, I want blood and cheese to be his deed. I know the writers don't like making the blacks very dirty, but Daemon has to be a major curator of blood and cheese. His entire dynamic with Rhaenyra is dependent on it, alright? Secondly, I want more participation from him. Truth be told, Daemon is the most fun character in the entire show, and him sitting around in Harrenhal and banging his alleged daughter doesn't really make for good fun. Maybe it does for him, though. All in all, Daemon is many things, but Grey is not one of them. Cheers. Okay, I finished the first part of that video, and then I read through a couple of leaks on Instagram and the Twitter. All right, and I've heard the last few, or I saw a few leaks over this, day, and the biggest one by far that I've found is that Nettles may not be involved in the show. Now, I'm actually a pretty big fan of Nettles because her part in Fire and Blood is crucial to the story. Her existence goes against the very idea by which House Targaryen rules. The idea of a non-Valyrian heritage kid taming a dragon goes to show that the bond of the Targs is not as special as they make it out to be. Since Daemon is a Valyrian supremacist in the show, her existence and consequently relationship to him would be an extremely interesting thing to watch, because Daemon now has to come to terms with the fact that the Targaryens and the people who have old Valyrian blood aren't really special because they have dragons. They're not closer to gods. You just need to get lucky with a dragon who really likes eating lamb for dinner. Alright? Right now, it's alleged that Rhaena will claim Sheepstealer. And if that's the case, then the whole banging Nettles thing is already out the window. Alright? But if Rhaena gets Sheepstealer, then Daemon's last good action in the books dies as well. Because, as I mentioned, Daemon sparing Nettles is the accumulation of his life's work. I know for a fact Rhaenyra won't order Daemon to kill his own daughter, so that plot line is dead, and after Daemon dies, Rhaena would be the last person left with a dragon. I feel like this gives a lot of room to the writers to just really have fun with whatever the hell they want. I know Rhaena and Baela aren't really involved in the dance, and Baela only really does one thing, and that's basically put an end to Sunfire's misery. But I feel like taking the only authentic black character from the books and then replacing them with the one who you casted to be black is an interesting choice. All right. Now, I'm not saying that as an SJW or anything along those lines. I just feel like for a show that really cares about its optics, considering morality of modernity, I feel like them taking Nettles, as I just said, the only black canon character from the books, and throwing her out in, exchange for Rhaena is frankly just a waste of time. I may be wrong in this, but even if I am, don't really mind, because, it's not like I'm doing this out of malice or anything like that. Another thing I heard is that Damon won't be showing up in Season 2, which I feel like is a goddamn disgrace. Because, well, frankly, the Blacks have the cooler characters, the cooler dragons, and, all the cool shit, don't they? They got Cregan, Benjicott, Blackwood, they got the Kermit Lord, or whatever. What are they called? The Muppet Lords of the Riverlands. Alright? They just got a whole bunch of cool people. And the Greens have what? My point exactly. Cheers.